Once again, we are looking at the Miller test, and I want to go through a little bit detail here. I know that you know the Miller test well by this point, but you are going to have this last critical analysis to write on a film. And similar to what you did with the music, the lyrics of the song, you will be looking at a film and determining whether it is obscene or not based on the Miller test. Remember that the Miller test talks about the average person applying temporary local community standards. Do they find the work taken as a whole? That's an important part, that you can't just take out one scene. So, for example, if we are going to, when you do look at the film, if there is one particular sexual situation or very violent scene in the film, you can't just focus on that one scene and say, because of this one scene, the whole film is obscene. You have to look at the film in its entirety. Does it appeal to the prurient interest? Two, the work depicts in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by applicable state law. I mean, there's certain things that state law don't allow. You don't have to go into that in great detail. What you just really need to be looking at is, does it show sexual conduct in a patently offensive way? And finally, the work must lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Looking through each of these, the average person, the material is to be, as the courts have defined, quote, judged neither on the basis of each juror's personal opinion nor by its effect on a particular sensitive or insensitive person or group. What does that mean? That means when you take into account the average person, if we're going to talk about Jacksonville, for example, we can't think of the average person as someone who attends First Baptist Church. We can't think of the average person as a married mother of three. We can't think of the average person as a young gay male. So, no particular person with a strong personal opinion or a particular sensitive personality, that's not our average person. You have to wait all that out, and then once we just think of this generic person who's not offended by much, not overly sensitive, doesn't have any particular outstanding biases, this is who our average person is going to be. Right away, hopefully you can see that that's a difficult standard to kind of apply, but that is what the legal standard is. For the community, in most jurisdictions, the community standards are the state standards. So again, if we're looking at Jacksonville, we're not going to look at a particular person in the city of Jacksonville, but we may need to think of someone as your average person in the state of Florida. Sometimes it even becomes regional. You sometimes need to think of your average person in the South or your average person in the Northeast. So sometimes the standard has to be a little bit broader. For example, under no circumstances would a judge ever instruct a jury to think of the average person living in Middleburg, Florida, or the average white male of Middleburg, Florida. You're not going to have someone like that. It's going to be the average person who lives in the state of Florida. So you have to take, yes, Jacksonville is somewhat conservative, Orlando is a little bit liberal, Miami has liberal and conservative areas. So you have to start looking at all of that. Community standards are becoming more difficult because of the shift. It used to be in the United States, as it is in a lot of the world, people would grow up, live, and die in the same communities. The U.S. has kind of been known more than other countries for its mobility. It's not really ever been rare in our country's history for people to pack up and leave. We saw with the westward expansion, we saw with the conquering of the West, we saw with the Dust Bowl, people moving around the country for different reasons. And so, again, no one bats an eye if someone says, well, I'm going to sell everything and move, to Detroit and try and make a life up there. Okay. But that also then starts to create a melting pot, for lack of a better term. If you think about just geographically, Florida is in the south. It's in the southern part of the United States. Would you consider Jacksonville a southern city? A stereotypical southern city? Most people would say yes. What about Miami? I don't think anybody would say that Miami is a southern city. It is physically located in the South, but it doesn't fall under any of the categories to define something as a stereotypical Southern area. Um, you have the Hispanics, you have Haitians, you have blacks, whites, you have languages, you have lots of mix. You have the Jewish community from up north, you have people from Quebec who live there half of the year. So it's such a mix of people that that starts to mess up what our community standard is. Because if we try to get an area and think of it as, let's say, the South, well, Miami throws that out the window. With the internet today, people are becoming more international, for lack of a better term, meaning that people are starting to be, and young people are starting to be aware of other cultures, other differences, other things in the world, more so than they ever were in the past because it's available to them. And so, because information is distributed in such a different way today, it's really becoming more and more difficult to apply a community standard because what is the community? If we say the state of Florida, again, that starts bringing in even if we say the state of Florida, that brings in a lot of not only southern but northern, international, different communities that we have to start looking at. When you look at the idea of patently offensive, only hardcore sexual materials meet this requirement. I know up until now I've been very vague with this, and that was specifically for this reason because it's taken the court a long time to start to say exactly what patently offensive means. Notice that it says here, and this is a quote from an opinion: representations or descriptions of ultimate sexual acts, normal or perverted, actual or simulated, and representations or descriptions of masturbation, excretory functions, and lewd exhibition of genitals. So notice these are what patently offensive comes to. That if it is a representation or description of ultimate sexual acts, normal or perverted, actual or simulated, that can rise to the level of patently offensive. And if it's a representation or description of masturbation, um, excretory functions, using the bathroom, lewd exhibition of genitals, then that could also rise to the level. So we see right away that simply nudity does not rise to the level. There has to be something more. Um, and then you could even look at what is lewd exhibition of the genitals. That is an odd way of putting it. What is a lewd exhibition of the genitals for the male and the female? We've definitely seen that, well, for the males, lewd exhibition could be an erection. Not sure um, what the lewd exhibition of genitals is for a female, simply because it hasn't been litigated yet. And when we see different things that have been banned, we see that women, exhibition by women, gets a pass a lot more than men. So you all, every single one of you, if you go to movies and you see this, you know that you will see full frontal female nudity a lot more often than you do male nudity, and that is part of this issue. And serious value. This is something people have often wanted to lower the standard a little bit. They wanted to ramp up and say for the patently offensive, it's anything that offends, but we see that's not the case. It really has to be something more than just, oh, that bothers me, I don't like it. And does it have serious value? The courts have stated that this means could someone. It's not does someone, but is there the possibility that someone could find literary, artistic, political, or scientific value in the work? So a lot of leeway is given to the creator of the piece of art, music, literature, film, etc. And it only has to be shown that someone might find some value in it.